I'm Matt Smith right now on Upfront. The former vice president one-on-one, the new revelations from January 6th to Wisconsin. I'm curious, in those moments on that day, were you aware of that plan? Our interview just moments away. Former Vice President Mike Pence on former President Trump and who will be on the convention stage in Milwaukee. Then, historic changes in Congress, new Democratic leadership, a GOP majority in the House. Congressman Mark Pocan standing by, the new insight just moments away, and the effort to codify same-sex marriage passing a crucial test. And drama inside the state capitol. New reporting as a controversial Republican lawmaker is kicked out of private meetings.
Taking on the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Smith. Just some 700 days until the 2024 presidential election, the midterm results still officially being tallied. And this past week, former President Donald Trump said he's running again, making the announcement official at his Mar-a-Lago estate. The road to the White House runs directly through Wisconsin, first for Republicans when the 2024 Republican National Convention is held in Milwaukee. This past week, former Vice President Mike Pence released his new book called So Help Me God. Pence reveals new details about his time inside the White House and his actions on January 6th. And he revealed even more to us in our interview. You write extensively and reveal new details about January 6th. So I want to dig right into that on that day. It is now widely known that a group of Wisconsin Republicans that day were attempting to get you a slate of false electors through Senator Johnson and his chief of staff. I'm curious, in those moments on that day, were you aware of that plan?
I was not aware of any plan to present alternate electors. In fact, on the Sunday before January 6th, Matt, I met with a parliamentarian of the Senate and asked a very direct question whether there were any other slates of electors that had been certified by states across the country. And she assured me that there was not. It's one of the foundational points that the states, like Wisconsin, states across the country under the Constitution conduct our elections, and they certify the election. And the only thing Congress is slated to do under the Constitution is to open and count the votes. I was determined to ensure that we do that with all of the certified electors that we had, which were only one from every state.
Your former aide texted Senator Johnson's chief of staff that day on the 6th and said, do not give that to him. Did he act on his own, or was that at your order? I
didn't have any knowledge of that at the time. I learned about that long after the fact, but it was altogether appropriate. The states have a process for certifying electors. Wisconsin had gone through that process, just as Indiana did when I was governor of Indiana. And so I think that was altogether fitting. I always will believe, Matt, that we did our duty that day, a tragic day, but we did our duty under the Constitution of the United States to see to the peaceful transfer of power. And in the end, a day of tragedy, thanks to law enforcement, Capitol and federal law enforcement. We quelled the violence, and a day of tragedy became a triumph of freedom.
As you've reflected on that day in your new book and you look back at these moments, what do you make about that plan, about some Republicans in states like Wisconsin attempting to send you a slate of false electors?
Well, I don't know much about the plan, except what I've learned long after the fact. Even if it was an organized effort, I'd leave that to others. But I speak very candidly about those days in So Help Me God. But Matt, you've known me a long time, and the privilege I had to be able to write the story of our whole administration, my years as governor of Indiana, my years as a fighting conservative in the House of Representatives, and then growing up in a small town in southern Indiana was an incredible privilege. I wanted to tell the whole story, and so Help Me God, we do just that all the way to the end. But I'll always be proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration, and I hope the people that cherish what we did in those 4 years to make this country stronger, more prosperous, will find reason for hope and encouragement if they read the pages of this book.
Former House Speaker Paul Ryan told us exclusively last week, just after the midterms, that former President Trump is a drag on the Republican ticket, and Republicans are much more likely to lose the White House in 2024 if he is on the ballot. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, let me say, I don't think anybody other than Donald Trump could have defeated Hillary Clinton in 2016. I think Republican primary voters knew that we needed a fighter, somebody that would take on the decades-long political Clinton machine and win. And he did, and I was proud to campaign with him and serve with him. But I have great confidence that Republican primary voters in the next 2 years are going to sort it out, Matt. And I think we'll have better choices. People may be better fitted to the times. As I've traveled around America, I hear people who are passionately grateful for our service and for the record of our administration, and how we secured our border, how we revived the economy, rebuilt the military, appointed conservatives to our courts at every level. But I also, in the same breath, hear Americans say that they're looking for leadership that can unite our country around the timeless ideals and the civility that people in Milwaukee, people all across the heartland and all across America practice every day with their neighbors and coworkers and friends. So I have every confidence Republican primary voters will sort it out. And my family and I, come the holidays, we'll all be together for the first time in 3 years. And we're going to spend some time reflecting on what role we might play.
And to that, when the Republican National Convention is hosted here in Milwaukee in the summer of 2024, where will you be?
I'll keep you posted, Matt. That might not altogether be up to me, but you know, we got two members of our immediate family in the military, and with deployments, our gang hasn't been together for Christmas for 3 years. We're going to be together in Indiana this year. After I travel the country sharing my story, and so help me God, we're going to spend time as a family, and we'll give prayerful consideration, and I promise to keep you posted on my plans for 24.
If it is not you, and if it happens to be former President Trump as the nominee, will you support him?
Well, let me just say, I really do believe that we'll have better choices. I think Republican primary voters understand the challenges facing this country. We have an administration in Washington that seems intent on weakening America at home and abroad every day. Inflation at a 40-year high. Families are struggling with the cost of energy, a crisis at our southern border. And I think we know just how important it is. A new Republican majority in the House of Representatives is step one. But we've got to make sure that we elect a Senate and we elect a president. And when the time comes, I'll be rallying behind that person, and I think it'll come from a list of better choices for America's future.
Mr. Vice President, I've covered you a fair amount of time, both here in Wisconsin and as governor in Indiana. You've always made your anti-abortion stance well known and a cornerstone of your conservative philosophy. I'm curious, if you were president, would you sign a national abortion ban into law?
Matt, you know me well. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. I'll always be proud to have been a small part of an administration that appointed 3 of the justices that overturned Roe versus Wade and returned the question of abortion to the states and the American people. And I've told pro-lifers in Wisconsin and across the country that we've just come to the end of the beginning, and it may take as long to restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law as it took to overturn Roe v. Wade. And while I certainly would have voted for Senator Lindsey Graham's 15-week bill in the Congress of the United States, I think it's more likely this will be resolved at the states, one state at a time. And however long I have on this good earth, I just promise all those people that share my determination to stand for life know that I'll be in the cause of life every single day until we restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law in every state in the land.
So is it fair to say if a bill were before you, if you were president, you would sign it a national abortion ban?
You know, I think that when Senator Graham introduced the 15-week bill in the Congress, he really laid bare the fact that the Democrat position is really the extreme position. And the Democrats support abortion on demand, taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. That's not where the American people are, Matt. And in a very real sense, I think engaging that debate and talking about a minimum standard on abortion at the national level is useful. But at the end of the day, I do believe this is likely to be resolved one state after another all across this country. And I look forward to being a part of that debate.
Former Vice President Mike Pence, the book is So Help Me God. Mr. Vice President, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt.
Coming up, a busy and historic week in Washington. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi leaving leadership. Congress set to federally protect same-sex marriage. Congressman Mark Pocan standing by next.